Hey YouTube, Roy Marko with Roy Marko's Garage. Come today, 1957 Chevy gauge package setup that we're doing for the 57 Chevy behind me. What's a little different, and what's going to be different about this is I'm going to add some odometer gauges in this instead of just using the standard original gauges for these two areas here. The car had a dash mounted tack that was underneath the dash last year when we did the engine install. The guy also wanted to add three 2-inch gauges underneath the dash, one of them being a temperature gauge, which the car already has built in. And I thought if we get this tack here, which is 2 5/8, we'd be able to make that fit in one of the holes. And then he went ahead and bought the fuel gauge to match. So we take this out of the can here, and with the 2 5/8 gauge, this chrome ring for the 57 Chevy just fits around it, and we can insert that whole unit right in here just like that. I'm going to build little mounts to hold that in there, and then we're going to replace the center gauge with brand new reproduction parts, and then make this whole bezel look really nice to go in the car. Now I know there's other options out there to use other gauge companies out there that make aftermarket gauges, but this is the route he wanted to go. Still keep an original look with just a couple of changes. These 2-inch gauges that we want to add, the water temperature, the voltage, oil pressure, are all electronic gauges. You can actually buy a 3-pack of gauges with all of those gauges already installed. When you order from Autometer those gauges, they all come with mechanical hookups, which means you have to run an oil line through the firewall from the engine right into the car. Why don't we just run the wiring and it'll be neater and tucked away? So with that, we had to get 3 2-inch gauges on their own that are electrical, and then this little bracket here, which is part number 2238. It's an aluminum bracket, not a steel bracket, and that will then mount under his dash, and he'll have the 3 gauges. He wanted a little bit of an old school feel in his old car, so that's why we didn't go with like a Dakota Digital or anything like that. They make some beautiful gauges that will fit in here. By the way, I'm not sponsored, or this video is not sponsored by Autometer. This just happens to be the product that we're putting in here. Okay, so here I have the instrument cluster assembled, and with the new pieces in there, the new speedometer head, indication for the gear shifting lever for 700 R4. It still is in miles an hour. The fuel gauge is now normally on a 57. It's on this side, but I moved it over to this side. This is an Autometer 2 5/8 fuel gauge. Got our chrome trim in, our signal light indicators. Now this light here used to be a generator light, and this one here was an oil light. They will no longer be hooked up because of gauges. Or if you were building a manual car, you may want to turn this one into a shift light. That would be nice. That's what I would do. On the back side, how I got these gauges mounted. Okay, so this is all original hardware here. This is the lever to your indicator. We do have the back of the fuel gauge and the back of the tachometer gauge here, and how I held them in was I used the original plate that actually holds the original gauge in. All I did was cut it off on each side, and one side had to be in reverse because the gauge was a little deeper, and the other side here. If a guy wanted to put this back to original, there's no real modification to this other than I ground out one of the little pieces on the inside, as you saw, just to be able to get this to fit. I did all the wiring on the back of the gauge to a plug. I utilized this as an original plug from the car, bought new ends, and then utilized it. I needed 7 pins. This is only a 6-pin plug, so I added the 7th, which is just an indication for the light up here that tells you that your high beam is on. So basically that's the gauge cluster wired on the back. The one mistake I did do is I used wire that's marked coolant, and it should have been a fuel gauge indicator wire. So anyway, I didn't cut a piece of that off, and so it doesn't say fuel indicator on the back here, but from the plug on, it's fuel indicator. Did the same for his triple gauge pack here. This is oil, water, and voltage. On the back side, again, everything is pre-wired, ready to go into the car here, and all of that does fit onto a single 6 plug. All the grounds went to one of the pins here that goes to the back of the gauge, and then that grounds up to a bolt here, which then goes up into the metal dashboard, which will then give you a ground. And on this gauge cluster here, I didn't have to, everything's grounded through the body. So that's that. It's the same style plug here on this end, except this one is black in color instead of a white color. I utilized that from the car as well and ran all that in. So those can then go into the car as needed. One little note that doesn't really come to gauges and wiring, these two studs here come out of the back of the gauge pod. One was missing, so I just made some out of ready rod the same length as an original, and I made both the same so they match. Not that you'll see it, but anyway, that's just a little side note. So there you have it, Autometer gauges modified into the 57 Chevy original dash. I know that you can buy like Dakota digital gauges, and there's other companies that make gauges out there. I think this is a nice modification that keeps it sort of nostalgic and still uses a lot of the original equipment. So for me, this was a mod that I enjoyed doing. One of the things he wanted was a switch to be able to shut off his electric fan, just because it's quite noisy. So if he goes into a car show, he wants to be able to flip it off. And then this switch here is going to be for his overdrive lockup for his 700R. So with power going to it, as you can see, the voltage gauge works and everything like that. And then when you flip it on, there's an indication light on that particular switch. If you flip the switch on, you'll have that light come on to let you know that that switch is activated, and same with this one over here. So the light corresponds with the switch being on or off. So, well, that's all I have for this video here on the gauges. Stay tuned for putting it back together and in the car. And if you like these videos, please like, share, and comment, as I love reading the comments. Have yourself a great day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.